Today on Psycast, we're going to reflect on something quietly unsettling. You have everything to be happy. So why aren't you? This episode is presented in podcast format with subtitles to help you follow along slowly and clearly. Another day, same emptiness. That silent echo that follows you even after a good day, even when everything seems to be going well. You've ticked the boxes. You've done the things. Maybe you've even smiled. But deep down, there's still a space inside that no achievement can seem to reach. It's not dramatic. It doesn't scream. It just lingers. A quiet sense that something is missing. And the worst part is, you don't even know what. You're not ungrateful. You know you have more than many. But that doesn't stop the question from creeping in late at night. Is this it? And I want to start right there, with that question. Because if you've ever felt that way, you're not broken. You're not spoiled. You're not ungrateful or shallow or too demanding. You're simply human. And humans, as strange as it sounds, are not designed for sustained happiness. At least not the way the modern world defines it. Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher often misunderstood as merely pessimistic, said something brutally honest. Happiness is only the negation of pain. In other words, we don't truly possess happiness. We just experience brief moments where suffering pauses. And that feels good. But it's not lasting, not stable. Because life always moves. This idea shook me the first time I heard it. I didn't want it to be true. But then I looked closer, and I saw it. In myself. In others. In how we chase moments, collect trophies, and then feel empty again. Not because we failed, but because we expected those things to fulfill us permanently. Maybe no one told you this before, but that emptiness you feel isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of depth. You're not broken. You're aware. You're awake enough to realize that what the world offers can't completely satisfy something eternal inside you. Let me tell you something I once heard from a therapist I admire. She said, "People don't come into therapy because they have nothing. They come because they have everything they thought they wanted, and they still feel hollow." That stayed with me. Because we live in a world that sells fulfillment like a product. Get this, do that, become this, and then you'll be happy. But the deeper truth is this. Happiness isn't something we reach. It's something we notice. And often, what gets in the way is the illusion that it's still missing. Let's take a breath here and ask honestly, not just what you want, but what you're hoping to feel when you get it. Peace, belonging, meaning, those don't come after the goal. They come in how you live toward it. Sometimes I wonder if the real ache isn't about what we're missing, but about what we're pretending not to need. Because, let's be honest, how often do we distract ourselves from this emptiness? With noise, with movement, with lists, goals, plans. As if the next thing might finally be the thing that makes the ache go away. But the truth is, when we stop chasing, we're forced to listen. And what we hear isn't always comfortable. There's a moment, and maybe you've felt this, when everything is quiet, when you finally get the day off, when the phone is silent, when no one's asking for anything. And instead of peace, what rises is unease. It's like your mind doesn't know how to just be. That silence becomes loud. That stillness becomes strange. And in that moment, you realize you've been outrunning yourself. Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants." Let that sink in. We can choose actions, but we don't always choose our desires. Sometimes what we chase isn't even ours. It's inherited, absorbed, projected. We run after things because someone told us they matter. But no one ever asked us, does this really feel like you? And that's where a quiet kind of suffering begins. Because it's not loud like grief or sharp like heartbreak. It's slower, softer, like a steady erosion of the soul. When your outer life keeps moving, but your inner life stays stuck. I've seen it in people who are outwardly successful, even admired. They do everything right. They have the job, the home, the smile, but they also have a secret sadness they don't know how to name, because nothing's technically wrong, but nothing feels fully right either. And in that tension, shame creeps in. You start questioning yourself. Maybe I'm just difficult. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe I'll never be satisfied. But what if the truth is simpler and more human? What if this emptiness isn't a flaw, but a signal? A quiet invitation back to yourself, to the parts you abandoned while you were busy becoming what the world applauded. Maybe, just maybe, you were never meant to be happy all the time. Maybe you were meant to be real, to feel the full range of being alive, to let your longing exist without fixing it, to sit with discomfort long enough to hear what it's trying to tell you. And what it often says is this: you've gone too far outside of yourself. Come back, not to comfort, not to ease, but to truth, to stillness, to meaning, the kind that doesn't need an audience. There's a strange kind of loneliness that comes from not being connected to your own life. You go through the motions, you show up, you do what's expected, and yet, somewhere along the way, something in you stops showing up. Not because you don't care, but because you no longer feel there. It's a quiet disconnection, not just from the world, but from yourself. I once read a passage that struck me in a way I couldn't explain at the time. It said, "Most people live lives of quiet desperation." Thoreau wrote that, and I used to think it sounded dramatic. But now I think it's just honest, because desperation doesn't always scream. Sometimes it looks like smiles, productivity, politeness. Sometimes it looks like keeping it all together while feeling quietly lost inside. That's the thing about modern suffering. It's often invisible. We've learned to dress it well, to keep it presentable. We call it being tired, needing a break, or just stressed lately. But underneath, there's often a deeper hunger, a yearning for something we can't quite name. We think it's a better job, or more recognition, or a change of scenery. But after the third, fourth, fifth change, the ache is still there, untouched. Schopenhauer, with all his darkness, pointed at this dilemma in his own stark way. He believed that desire is a trap, that the moment we fulfill one wish, another takes its place. Like water slipping through your fingers, contentment is never held, only glimpsed. And if we base our well-being on the fulfillment of every want, we remain in a constant loop of dissatisfaction. He didn't say this to depress us. He said it to awaken us, to invite us into a quieter freedom, the kind that comes from expecting less and understanding more. And maybe that's where our modern ideas about happiness get in the way. We're told to always want more, to optimize, to improve, but very few people talk about what it means to stop chasing and start being. Not out of laziness or resignation, but out of clarity, out of finally realizing that life is not something to master, but something to meet, moment by moment, with presence. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt genuinely at peace with nothing to prove? When was the last time you paused, not because you were forced to, but because you wanted to actually feel your life, to sit in the morning light or in your own skin without rushing toward the next thing? These moments are rare, not because they're impossible, but because we're conditioned to overlook them. We scroll past our own lives looking for something better. But what if better isn't out there? What if better is right here, waiting for your attention? The hardest part, I think, isn't knowing that happiness fades. It's accepting that it's not supposed to be permanent, that the stories we were told, the ones where you find the right path, the right person, the right purpose, and everything finally feels whole, might have left something out. They forgot to mention that life doesn't owe us a constant sense of fulfillment, that sometimes just being here, breathing, surviving, that's already enough. There's a quiet dignity in ordinary days, in doing the dishes, in folding your clothes, in walking the same path to work or school or home. These moments don't shine on their own, but they hold something sacred if you stay long enough to see it. And when we measure meaning only through peak experiences, we miss the beauty of the soft, unremarkable hours where our life actually happens. Schopenhauer believed that art, music, and beauty offered brief escapes from the suffering of existence, windows into something beyond the endless wheel of craving. He wasn't saying beauty fixes life, but it pauses it. It gives us breath, a moment of presence, of relief from wanting, a piece of music that moves you, a painting that silences your thoughts, a sunset that catches you off guard. These aren't luxuries. They're necessities. Reminders that not everything has to be useful to matter. And maybe that's the shift. Maybe instead of asking, why aren't I happy? We can begin to ask, where am I not present? Because the moments we miss, the subtle ones, often carry the feelings we keep searching for elsewhere. Peace isn't always loud. Meaning doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in the middle of a conversation, or while tying your shoes, or sipping coffee alone with no one watching. So many of us are waiting to feel alive, as if it's something that will click into place when all the right conditions are met. But what if aliveness is less about what's happening around you and more about your ability to see what's already there? To return to this moment, this one, and notice that it's already full of things trying to speak to you. It might not always feel good. It might not always feel exciting, but it's real. And sometimes reality, raw, unpolished, quiet, is the exact thing we've been avoiding in our search for something more. Here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Nothing external can permanently soothe an internal ache. You can change your job, your city, your habits. You can meet someone new. You can improve everything visible and still feel invisible to yourself. Because the real longing isn't for more achievement, more validation, more noise. The real longing is for alignment, for the quiet, grounded sense that your life actually matches your soul. And that kind of alignment doesn't come from chasing. It comes from listening to the parts of you that don't speak in goals or deadlines, the parts that speak in silence, in stillness, in the ache itself. That ache, as unbearable as it may seem, is not trying to ruin you. It's trying to redirect you inward, back to the you beneath the performance, the you before the striving, the you who doesn't need to be anything other than here. So, what do we do with all this? We begin by stopping, not forever, just for a moment, long enough to notice where we are, long enough to ask, what have I been running from? And what if I already have what I need, but I'm looking in the wrong direction? Schopenhauer didn't offer a map to joy. He offered something rarer, a mirror. He held it up to the human condition and said, look, this is what it means to live with desire. This is what it means to chase and never arrive. But in that struggle, you might find truth. And in truth, you might find peace. It's not an easy peace. It won't sell millions of books or promise 10 steps to happiness. But it's real. And real these days is a kind of miracle. So maybe we don't need to fix the emptiness. Maybe we need to let it speak. To trust that what feels like a void is sometimes a doorway. And maybe the reason you still feel unsatisfied, even with everything in place, is because your soul is not asking for more. It's asking for you to come home, to be present, to be honest. And that kind of presence, that kind of honesty, it doesn't always feel like happiness, but it feels like meaning. And meaning, even in sorrow, is a kind of light. So the next time you hear that quiet voice, the one that says, another day, same emptiness, try not to run, try to stay, sit with it, breathe with it, ask what it's trying to tell you. And you might just hear something sacred in the silence. Maybe no one told you this before, but you're allowed to not be happy all the time. You're allowed to be deep, to feel things that don't make sense, to walk through days that feel uncertain, and still be whole, still be worthy, still be home. Because the goal was never constant happiness. It was always presence. And presence is enough.